administrators are learning. It's a new curriculum and it's a new approach. It's not the way your grandpa did math, say, particularly with his fingers. But that's going to just be part of the challenge, I think, of implementing this. I think there's been some concern by some parents that maybe we aren't teaching the fundamental adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and we're backing off of some of that in favor of the broader concepts. I think the hope is, or the expectation is, that we'll, if I can borrow a term, we'll catch them along the way, and they'll get it, and they'll not only get the concepts, but also get the arithmetic. Teacher training, I think, is sort of as we go, sounds like. And part of that is just this new idea of Common Core and no textbooks, and how do we take that approach? I think you all described at the beginning of our time here. The only other thing I think is that challenge of the 90-minute block, and I think that's been spoken to tonight, that it doesn't necessarily have to be the 90 minutes with everybody, particularly if you've got para-help or some options in the classroom to pull some kids out and maybe do a little more differentiated teaching. That together with a presentation on engaging the parents, and it's exciting, not only to hear the concepts being applied and how the teachers are responding to it, but even the hope for the parents of getting some instruction as well, rather than trying to get it from little Johnny. So.
Alex, do you have anything, questions or comments?
Honestly, I think you guys are doing a tremendous job. The collaboration, to take on Engage New York, to find it, take it on, pass it on, collaborate together, to put it out there, and then come in here and do a presentation with 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks under your belt with some of the new ones. I see tremendous progress, and I don't think our kids will do nothing but succeed with people like you behind them. So congratulations, and job well done tonight, and I appreciate you guys' comments.
Just a couple of comments for me. One thing I think that the community needs to understand, and the parents need to understand, is that we would be in a similar predicament that we're in now, whether we were under No Child Left Behind or under college and career ready standards, because it's just that time. You know, we were going to have to find a new curriculum. You know, no matter what we were doing, we're going to have to figure something out and figure out a new curriculum or not. But the 3 concerns I think I have the most is whether or not teachers know that they have all of the flexibility that you guys have been talking about today. And I think it would be great maybe if they could even watch part of this presentation so they know that they have this flexibility and they're not stuck to, you know, 42 and a half minutes, and if you go to 43, the world's going to come crashing down on you. And also that they're able to supplement if they need to. I think a lot of teachers don't know that. And, you know, hearing you today, it sounds like that should be something that's commonplace in their discussions. And, you know, from what I've heard from teachers and from parents is, oh no, we can't look at Book A anymore because we're implementing Engage New York with Fidelity. But Engage New York encourages that supplementing. And so I think it's imperative that we make sure the teachers understand that and feel comfortable with that. But I guess my ultimate concern, and I was reading an article in our KSB newsletter today about the difference in education from the last time the Royals were in the playoffs to this year when they will hopefully be in the playoffs, and how, you know, all we had to worry about was the Iowa test of basic skills, which is what I took, versus a state assessment every single year. And I know I've had this argument before. What I'm worried most about is once we see that test, who cares about Engage New York? Let's teach to the test. And I'm really, really worried about that once we know, because we still don't know what that test is going to look like. Because I like the fact that we're slowing down, we're taking the time to answer the kids' questions, and teaching them the right way so they know and understand it, versus, well, I'm going to teach them this word because I know this word and this problem is going to be on the test. So, but I really appreciate your time. I know we ran probably a lot longer than Ms. Roderick and Dr. Dennis told you we were going to run. So thank you so much for your time and your patience with us and for all of your hard work. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Dr. Ethan. Dr. Carlin.
Thank you. You'll notice on your agenda there are 4 policies that we're asking the board to do a first reading on. As promised, this will be a kind of a regular part of what we bring you over the next several months. We're trying to establish a regular review policy. A couple of these are new policies that are recommended from KASB, and a couple of them are revisions to policies. And I'm not going to go through each of them specifically. You've had them. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But there are a couple of things that I want to highlight about the process. The first one, GAT, isn't going to be a new policy. That's not something that we've had. However, what is contained in the policy is essentially the practice that we've been following to this point anyway. The same thing with IIBF, although you'll notice there is a star in the title of that. That's a little convention that we've invented. This is a policy that's recommended by KASB, but the star indicates that we have made a change or changes to the policy. So simply by looking at the policy title, we'll be able to see any policies that we have made an edit to what the recommended policy is. And so I do want to explain that one to you. In that policy, on the second page, there's a list of specific prohibitions. The fourth prohibition that KASB recommends is that utilization of a network to disseminate non-work related material. We look at those prohibitions as thou shalt not ever in any circumstance. You'll notice the other ones up above it deal with following the federal law related to FERPA. Well, obviously that's certainly a thou shalt follow that law. However, in this circumstance, there are circumstances where we think that it may be warranted, and that would be, a couple of examples might be a teacher taking a college class and using their email account after hours to participate in that class. That's really not work related, but certainly is something that we've encouraged in the past. We've also talked to employees about the ability to use their email account for personal reasons, as long as those personal reasons don't go against the philosophy or any other policies in the district. Might be communicating with a college age family member after hours, of course, not to be done during work time, but this would be inconsistent with the practice that we've had. Second one there is, or the fifth one is utilization of the network as a means for advertising or solicitation. Give you a couple of examples here. We have a lot of organizations that do fundraisers with local restaurants. And I don't want to mention those by name tonight. However, Roy sends those out regularly, and I believe technically then that would violate this if we left that prohibition in there. We've had some other organizations come to us and offer us employee discount nights. Well, we use our email system to notify staff that it's a benefit for school employees. Well, we certainly want to be able to get that information out to staff members. And so in those cases, we have sent that information out. This doesn't mean that we think we ought to be using it regularly to advertise or solicit in other fashions, but if the board's policy specifically prohibits that, then we would lose the ability where we think it's appropriate. So there are no other edits in that policy from what KASB's recommendation are. IIBG is computer and device use. Let me back up, sorry. We also have attached copies of our acceptable use policies that we've had probably for close to 20 years, and it's a good idea, I think, to have those specifically in the policy book. And we have one that we use for staff, we have one that we use for students in grades 5 512, and we have another one that we use for students that are in grades K through 4. And we may be bringing you one other one to amend that. The high school may be using one with the iPads. We're still kind of checking into that. So, but all of those will be attached. 3 of them are there. The other 2 are revisions, computer and device use. And the last one, Diana mentioned a policy, I think, that was from 1996. Well, this is an example of why this is important. Use of surveillance cameras used to be called use of video cameras. It was last reviewed and adopted by the board in 1994. As you can imagine, that technology has changed a little bit, and the implications there have changed a little bit. So part of this process is going through and updating and getting our policies all current. So this one is being recommended with the changes that are presented. So, but it was originally a policy. You'll notice the date on their policy was 96. That's because it changed from video cameras to surveillance cameras, and the old policy, and the current policy in our policy book refers to videotape, and which we don't use in our surveillance camera systems. Questions?
On the computer and device use, I'm having a heck of a time keeping certain softwares off of my computer at home. And so if the student, how does that, ends up with software that he didn't install, it just got installed on his computer? It might be considered a violation of IIBG, might it? Because it says if no software including freeware or shareware or other applications may be installed without approval of the systems operator.
Right.
I'd like that to say, and the owner of the computer, we won't use that to reprimand the student.
No. The purpose here is that people shouldn't be going out and finding software and installing it without clearing it, but plugins that have installed themselves, that type of stuff, that's not what we're referencing here. This is, I'm not gonna go out and bring in a piece of software and install it, intentionally install it without clearing that given permission.
Do we need to clarify that with this? Just a comment. I know we're not adopting anything here.
I think it's clear, Mark. I think it'll be understood by the technology people and the principal.
And another question, if I may. Under the JGGA surveillance cameras, is that proposed language in there basically saying anything and everything on any of our cameras is student record?
It is saying anytime there is something that involves personally identifiable information with the student and a discipline issue, that information then becomes part of that student's record.
We have to have both of those.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments with regard to these? Then we'll go on for approval at the next board meeting. Any board open discussion? Any comments?
I will be able to attend the Friday board meeting.
Is there anyone else who won't be able to attend the 19th, 7:30?
Do we expect that to last?
How long do you,
If that's probably an exaggeration.
how fast can you say the Pledge of Allegiance, Jane?
Well, I just have children I'd like to do this.
Oh, yeah.
Just checking. Thank you.
Any other, Mark? Tim?
Okay. I just want to say that, there's so much help that school boards are provided by a lot of different organizations, but particularly by their own staff. And I applaud everything that USD-457 has going for it in the way of professional staff and leadership. There is very few things more entrusted to a local school board than curriculum. pretty big deal. And so I, for one, particularly appreciate the time spent today in talking about the math curriculum. It's necessary, it's needed in raising not only the understanding of what we're doing, but also the understanding at the board level of what we're doing, since we're entrusted with curriculum by statute at the local levels. I just appreciate it.
Couple requests. I'd like to look at that 1996 homework policy. And, at that time, we even had a different superintendent. Times have changed, and maybe it is a good time to look at that homework policy. I don't even know what it states, but if we could maybe bring that before another meeting.
And I will tell you, the homework policy is Garden City's. It's not, to my knowledge, there's not a homework policy recommended by KASB, although we can check on that. But I think that's what the committee was asking for this evening, that we would look at that, and with the board, if that's the board's pleasure, we certainly will. Because as you say, Tim, 96, a lot of things have happened since 96.
Then the other request that was made this evening was, I'd like to look at the cost to send these bus drivers to that competition. I think it's important that, they have those opportunities to travel to events and learn from other bus drivers and competition, and I can't imagine that cost would be that great that we can't pay that, but maybe it is. So if we could look into the cost and encourage our bus drivers to say, yeah, we want you to go represent Garden City and show them how well bus drivers we have, I think those bus drivers would appreciate it. And who knows, we could have a state sign, bus driver state champ, right? Just something to,
Tim, I think that one of the goals of the district is to recruit and retain the very best staff that we can. And that includes bus drivers. It includes the very best maintenance workers, the very best custodians, the very best parents, teachers, administrators. We send students to competitions all the time in this district. They have lots of opportunities, and it presents quite an expense to the district, and sometimes quite an expense in fundraising. But if it's the will of the board, we certainly can come back and give you kind of a cost structure, or what it would cost to allow our bus drivers to compete at the district, state level. I think that would parallel what soon to be our director's goal here is to improve the culture of our bus drivers and recognize them for what they are, professional bus drivers, and honor their professionals. We can look at that.
Well,
And the cost will be nominal. It won't be significant because it's all in state.
I took the concern to be that they get reimbursed and that the fees aren't paid, some of the cost isn't paid ahead of time. And I think it's usually our policy that they have to submit receipts, isn't it, and verification before they can get reimbursed. And that's what I took from his comments, was that people can't afford that up front. So I don't know if there's something to do.
Let me look into it. So we have clarification of what it would cost to participate.
okay, thank you.
Anything else? The next board meeting will be Friday, September 19th at 7:30 here in the board meeting room. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
He moved, he seconded.
Second.
I won't take a vote, I'll just adjourn us. Okay?